At this time, we're going to have a small roundtable discussion. And Derek, you've just left the stage. I'm going to invite you to come back up right away. And you may have already introduced yourself adequately, but if you'd like to say anything more about your position on our topic today or anything.
Have I got the mic on or off? Is that on? Yes, it is. Thank you. Yes, on this today, I'm part of the BYOD. I have got friends, haven't I, coming up? Correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, good. I'm part of the BYOD panel. I'm going to talk about bring your own devices. I'm probably a little bit controversial on the topic, and hopefully I can share that with you when we talk about it today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Mario, could you please come up and just give us a quick little blurb of introduction of why you're on this board?
Hi, everybody. So we've been using BYOD now for, I think, so almost around 6 to 7 years. And previously, we were a one-to-one program. And we have BYOD from grade 4 to grade 12. It was a quick transition for us because we implemented it from grade 12 first. We went to the teachers for BYOD, and then we went to the entire high school and then the entire middle school, and then slowly we implemented it in the elementary as well for grade 4 and grade 5. Like I said, we've got approximately 750 students. We have a very transient population in the sense is that the average stay for teachers and students could be between 2 to 3 years. And when students move from place to place, it was just easier for them to bring their device along with them, come to our school, and plug into the network.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add one more thing? I'm going to share, just in case if you're walking out, I'm going to share how BYOD has failed across a number of our schools and what we've done to try to resolve that.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll hear about some successes as well. Stephen, could you please come up? This is Stephen Sutantro. He's an Apple teacher and a Google certified trainer and Google certified innovator. Would you like to give a bit of an introduction?
Yes. Okay, my name's Steven. I'm from Sampoerna Academy, Jakarta. I'm teaching social study, and right now I'm Google certified trainer. I'm leading several workshops for training teachers with technology, and especially for BYOD, we are preparing teachers definitely to be digital savvy right now because it's a big challenge in Indonesia. But I think we are going to have a future school in Indonesia that is more exciting with technology. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Gusman, Adi, thank you very much. If you could just give us a brief introduction. Gusman is our fourth and final panelist.
Hi, my name is Gusman, and I'm from Lilin Bangsa Intercultural School. So actually, our school is still growing. So the number of our secondary students is just 50, and actually less than 50. So here, since we just moved to the new places, we try to apply the BYOD in my school. And the students is bringing their own device because the facility in the school is not really supporting the learning. Besides, we wait for the learning itself until the lab is ready. We ask them to bring themselves, and we prepare the network over there.
Okay, thank you very much. Rather than starting out with something easy, I thought we might start off with just going right for the jugular. There's a lot of talk about using our BYOD policies, and many times a big argument which is used is simply that of, well, it's a lot cheaper because it takes, a huge amount of money, in particular if you're a school that is, an iPad for everyone or a high-powered computer for everyone. Okay, that's one argument. But what about if we completely remove the cost factor? Is there any argument in favor of having BYOD? Why don't we go ahead and start out with Gusman?
So for me, if we take away the cost from the school and so on, the things that I see from BYOD is first the efficiency on learning. When the students can have their own devices, that means they already learn with their devices and they don't need to adjust again with the new system and so on. I think that's all.
Okay. Does anyone have an alternative viewpoint?
I think so. Just let me help answer that. I mean, if you take cost out of it completely, we were not even looking at cost. We are looking at the value that it brings to the student, the education piece to it. In the sense is that students value their own property, in the sense is that they were able to take better care of their laptops. We didn't go for a big bang approach where we said everybody's going to go BYOD. We did a prototype. That's what we do normally at ASB, is we prototype things before we basically put it into a full implementation. We started off with the high school. We saw exactly that was bringing value to them. We interviewed the kids as well to see exactly what kind of value it was bringing to them of bringing their own device. Like I said, it built responsibility. Also, basically, they were able to take better care of their laptops. The teachers wanted to use a mix of both, basically Windows as well as Apple. And as a technology department, we were able to support that. Again, the move to BYOD comes down to basically if you're able to move all your applications to the cloud, so it becomes easier to implement. It's no longer a device, it is more like your browser, so everything is basically on your browser. It's nothing to do with like, I will have a Chromebook or I will have a laptop or a PC. So it was more, we wanted to promote anytime, anywhere learning, and we wanted to basically be more convenient for the student and the teachers to what device they wanted to use. So cost was not so much of an aspect. Yes, there is cost saving in it because the CAPEX model basically gets totally eliminated because students and teachers bring their own laptop, and it's a one-time investment for the schools when we give an allowance to the teachers and for purchasing of their own devices.
Yeah, cost aside, I think it's just a natural thing for students to bring a device that they're comfortable with. For example, I've got my iPhone. I did have my iPhone. It's over there. But if someone gave me a, no disrespect to other brands, if someone gave me an Android right now to use, I'd be saying if I have to use that, I really have to work pretty hard all the time. I'm just used to my iPhone. So just using a device that you're comfortable with.
I want to add BYOD really improved the efficiency in my class because definitely it reduced the use of paper, and we don't need to send a paper exam to the students. We easily distribute everything through the gadgets, and it's very simple and really reduce the cost of administration like paper and pencil stuff, which really save a lot of cost. I know it's a huge investment in the beginning, but I think it's long-term investment.
Just one more thing is that. Just to get an audience, like we do our basically on data and analysis. So just to get from the audience over here, how many of you guys are using BYOD? Okay. For those who are not putting up their hand, do you have a home router? Do you have a router at home? Do you have wireless at home? Is that a yes? If you have a wireless router at home, please put up your hand. Okay. So if you have a wireless router at home, you have been doing BYOD from the very beginning you bought the router on, because your computer, your laptop, your devices are all connected to one particular network and using the resources of that particular network. So again, it comes down to everybody does use BYOD. This is what we explain to schools, is that they're a little bit scared about going to BYOD. I said, but BYOD is already happening in the houses. It's already happening at home. So that's one more perspective which you can clear off the mind, that BYOD is easy to implement as long as basically your users are trained and they basically can have a safe environment to work in.
Okay, so I'm hearing very positive comments about BYOD. Would you have any comments against having BYOD? That you think it would be better perhaps not to have it in some cases?
I'd like to a slight modification to that response there. And it stems back to what I just said before. I was noticing BYOD failing in that we weren't getting greater uptake of using the device to bring about meaningful learning opportunities, which otherwise would not be possible. And people were just using the device as a $1,000 pencil. You know, you've heard that story before. And how do you get teachers to use that effectively? Well, even when we looked at the language of BYOD, we changed it. We changed the number of schools and actually had success. And the success was this: stop using the word BYOD. This is our story. Stop using the word BYOD. Because when a school puts out a letter to parents saying, come in for a parent night because we're having BYOD, what's the immediate thing that parents think? Oh, it's about devices. And when I turn up to visit that school a lot of these nights, 80% of the questions from the parents are about, oh, can I bring them a Chromebook? Can I bring my Mac? Why can't they get this device? What is that network? We changed it then. We said any school that's even thinking this way, don't even use the language from get-go. What do you really want to achieve in learning? And what we drilled down to, and is what we all believe here, it's about anywhere, anytime learning. So as soon as a school puts out a initiative saying, we're starting an anywhere, anytime learning program, I tell you what, I go to those nights, 80% of the questions are arguing about learning, and 20% of them are about devices. That's what you want. You want parents and staff and students debating about learning. Oh, so when a parent sees anywhere, anytime learning program, oh, that must mean they're going to do learning at school and at home. Must have something to do with the internet. I reckon they're going to need a device for that. It's not front and centre device, it's just part of it. Because what we're trying to achieve is anywhere, anytime learning. As soon as we change the language and change the focuses on the learning outcomes, it makes an absolute... We had success then. We had teachers now not saying, oh, bring your own device, they brought it in, I don't really have to engage with it much, they've just brought it in. But when it's an anywhere, anytime learning initiative, teachers now know that, oh, we have a responsibility and accountability to provide learning anytime, anywhere, and it actually gets leveraged by the device, so there's a massive shift in change. That's my thought.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, maybe you could, yes, Mario, you had something?
No, just on failure. So the thing is that, again, so implementation of projects are, I mean, like mostly the failure takes at the initiation stage. So there are 4 parts to basically implementation. One is the initiation stage, again, where this whole topic about BYOD starts, where it's anytime, anywhere learning. The next one is basically the actual planning stage. So there are 4 stages that we have, that we go through for every project cycle. So you have like the planning stage, then you have the training stage. So you train your users. The most amount of time that has to be spent is on the initiation and the planning. These 2 are the most important things whenever you want to have a successful implementation, irrespective whether it's anytime, anywhere learning. So it's initiation, it is initiation, you have planning, you have training, and then basically you have something where you go and you implement. And basically you have to relook at this entire cycle all over again to make sure that you can basically change your policies or make improvement to your policies. Failure normally takes place not at the planning stage, it's at the execution stage where people go directly and implement. Again, whatever you're learning over here is basically collect data on it. Try a prototype. Bring a small group. Don't go and say to your entire parent community, we're going to go ahead with like anytime, anywhere learning or BYOD. Get a selective amount of parents who are really interested in making change and bringing about change. Find out exactly, is it going to impact learning? Like he said, learning is, everything that we do at the end of the day is about learning. And you'll only have failure. And you learn from your failures. I've seen a lot of schools fail, and basically we have learned exactly from their failures. So it's okay to fail. That's what we're teaching our kids. It's okay to fail as long as you're failing in a safe environment, not when you go out there. It's about minimizing your risks. That's what we talk about. So go through this stage. I mean, it's a simple project management stage. That's initiation, you have your planning, you have your implementation, and then you have basically review of the entire cycle. So review your processes. This is basically which will save you from your failure.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, yes. One of the things when people think about BYOD is they think, again, well, everyone's got their own device, it's their own thing. And in some contexts, students may even be using their own network. Now, obviously, that's not an ideal, but it happens frequently, especially in state school systems in different countries. Well, if it's my device, and it's my network, and it's my learning, why do we even need a BYOD policy?
I think in my school case, it happened like students access irrelevant websites. Like a lot of times, before we started in the beginning BYOD, it's very difficult because we don't have like clear policy. And students feel like, hey, yeah, just like you mentioned about like, okay, this is our own device. We can be free to access anything. But from the teacher perspective, like me, it's quite annoying because it distracts the student at first. But that is why it's very important, since like it has been mentioned, it's very important for teachers to be prepared for the clear rules, like why we should have like policy and consequence for the students, so they can access like relevant website, they can be more productive to really access like something that important for learning. It's something that should be clearly communicate in the beginning. And I think it's very important because if not, it will distract student concentration, it will affect the learning itself, it will be like a disaster for the class itself. So it's very important for us to have like clear policy so students are, like, can access strict website, educational website. Again, it's about learning. It's not about technology, right?
Okay, following up on that question, Derek, with the experience that you have, what is something that you disagree with regarding how most learning communities approach BYOD policy, aside from not using the word BYOD?
So, sorry, I missed the last part of the question.
Yes, with the experience that you have, what do you disagree with regarding how most learning communities approach BYOD policies?
Oh, so a trend probably has been, a trend is that without assuming that students are actually going to be doing a lot of things at the same time, and you know, when BYOD goes into schools in the initial period, sometimes as teachers we can easily dumb down all of a sudden, you know, the whole lesson, because not only do we have 25, 30 students, but we also have 25, 30 devices as well. And we see this quite often. So one of the things I disagree with is assuming that everyone's going to be doing the same thing at the same time, which is moving back to an industrial model of education. So one area that we look at that's changing is called role organised technology engagement. So if you're working in science groups, science investigations, all of a sudden you'll see all the kids open up their laptops and they're all doing the same thing at the same time. They're all reading the investigation, they're all recording. Why all of a sudden have we dumbed down teaching? You know, why doesn't each of those laptops take up a particular role? You're the recorder, you're the investigator, you're actually doing some more research on it, you're taking the shots, you're conducting it. It's such a simple little shift in the mind, but we just don't do it when we do it when we have BYOD. So I think it's just, it all comes back down to professional development and effective training. But there are some very simple things that we forget about when all of a sudden every member in our class has a device. I don't know why, it's a good PhD study anyway.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you could field this one, Mario. Of course, we did mention that in many cases, students might actually be using even their own network. But having said that, there's a good chance that a lot of people are going to be using a school network, whether it's the wired network or whether it's the network that is coming through Wi-Fi devices, or maybe even it's a 3G or a 4G or 5G router even that students are using. What is your position on the implementation of blocking software on school networks when there's a BYOD policy? And by blocking software, I'm talking about the sort of thing that we used to refer to, especially in the 90s, as a net nanny.
So, I mean, again, this question, I mean, it's a good question, and I've got this before, but the thing is that what we do is we have, on our network, we can monitor everything that's happening over there. The kids are aware of it, the parents are aware of it, everybody's aware of it, but we don't actually monitor our kids. It's just there, it's logged. If it needs to be pulled up, yes, we will use it, and we will show it to the kid that this is what has been accessed, but we do not monitor kids. We don't have any software to basically make sure that everybody is on task. We got rid of those softwares because, again, it's a trust. And the places where we found that monitoring was required is maybe because the teaching hasn't changed. So again, like the training part of it is like making the lessons much more engaging. So kids would basically be involved in the learning rather than on their devices. So yes, there is a risk of somebody getting their, it's not a risk as such. They can get their own device, they can use their own network. We don't have any issue with that. The main thing is that the teaching and learning, the instruction that is being given by the teacher is what is important to us. And as long as the teacher can basically give their instruction through technology, it's fine with us. And engaging the kids, that's the main thing. It's about engaging the kids as always. If the teachers are able to engage the kids will not invest into their devices doing something else. We know that they'll be involved in their lesson itself. So that's more important. That's where the training part of it comes. Because, I mean, there was a great presentation on learning and analytics, which we do from the very beginning. It's almost now, this is the second year that we've been doing learning and analytics. We've got our own analytics software, which, and we're getting constant feedback to see exactly how we can improve the teaching and learning through the devices. Not only devices, but everything. Was it a good class today? We just ask 5 basic questions at the end of every class, which is recorded, and we see trends, based on the trends of how learning has taken place in this class. This was very high. What did the teacher do? How can the teacher basically show that in their teachers' meeting, when they have every Tuesday, we have a meeting with teachers, and teachers basically demonstrate exactly what they're doing. So we track everything, we see exactly that it's going to be used and going to improve teaching and learning. So irrespective, a kid is bringing a device from outside using a separate network, we're not bothered with that. As long as our internet is safe, we make sure we segregate our network. It's by VLANs. We've got security in place to take care of our students using it on our network. But the main thing is the education piece to it and making sure that the teaching is engaging for the students. So that's what we focus on highly.
Okay. Maybe if we could continue with Gusman. But within that role of your own network, when students are accessing with their own devices, do you think that there's any responsibility for the school to block certain types of sites?
Since we are educator, of course, because we are dealing with the students at school, right? So in my school, what we do over here is we are giving the school account to the students, and through the school account, we are logging in as the administrator in the Google admin console, and then we just list the website that cannot be accessed by the students, and then so we track it from there, and then we also activate the save filter, and then if it's used in the school laboratory, we put the supervised user. We create the supervised user in Chrome so we can track everything that they browse over there. And we also disable the guest mode. And in addition, in the Google admin console, we also add the create the students so they unable to delete the history, and they also cannot go to the incognito mode. So I think that's what we do in our school. Maybe Mr. Derek already do something more advanced in my school. Yeah, Mr. Mario, I mean.
Yeah, so we've got, I mean, like, we use a security solution basically to safeguard our kids, like I said, and everything's been monitored. So it's at the application level, at the student level, so there are policies for all. The policies, again, are being set by the students, teachers, based on feedback that we receive. It's not been set by the IT department. It's not the IT people that basically make these decisions. It's the leadership, the divisional heads, as well as the teachers and students that come up with what needs to be blocked and what needs to be done. We have something called as the Child Protection Act, which has to be followed as well. It is mandatory to block certain sites, which is required. But again, we keep educating our staff exactly and our students, because like they could use their own personal network, and even they could go outside and access information without being on the network over here. So the only thing that we could do is just keep educating and creating awareness basically.
I think it's actually, yeah, I agree. But I think it's also important to put systems in place that's going to block sites for early years students or young students, to block those sites which accidentally occur. Because, you know, as much as kids can be kids, in young grades, it's particularly the accidental showing of inappropriate content or not appropriate content, if it's not inappropriate, not appropriate content. So I think that's something that I know we concentrate in our schools for that, as well as teaching, you know, working on the education of students as well.
But I think before we block some a website, I think we have to like discuss with the teachers and also like the educational administrator, like what kind of sites that we need to block. Because sometimes in my previous school, even they block all social media, which I know sometimes it's quite annoying, but at the same time, for some teachers, they learn, and the students, they learn also from social media, which I think we have to have a clear discussion before we block website, So we need to know like which website is educational, which website is really distracting, like a game or something like that.
I'm sure if you did a poll right now, I'm sure some schools block YouTube and some schools don't.
Right.
I mean, YouTube's a wonderful resource, but at the same time, it can be used for harm too. Oh, what do you do?
How many schools here block social media?
Social media.
Just by show of hands, how many schools block social media? Okay. How many of you, I mean, like in your region, have access to social media? Okay. We have social media open on our school network. So.
Okay. I'm afraid we're running a little bit short of time, but there's one thing which I do think is very important for us to address, especially as many of us are either actually forming our policies because they might not even have been formed yet. We've just kind of let there be devices and people have hooked up, but we've not talked about it. Or maybe we are reviewing a policy that already exists. I believe Stephen mentioned the importance of discussing with teachers. I would ask, what is the role of parents in developing your BYOD policy? And connected to that, what is the role of students?
In my school, like before we start BYOD, we definitely meet our parents and explain, and we have agreement. So, like, okay, the laptop and or the device that has been entrusted to students should be fully used for educational purpose. Even though they bring it home, we encourage parents to have control. Like the device time every day at home, and we really want to remind the parents if the device is not used properly, the parents is like we encourage them to work together with us. Like they have the right to confiscate it, and or they can revoke the access of the internet connection, even at home, at school. So we clearly discuss it with parents before we implement BYOD. So parents work together with us to ensure that students use their device productively. So that's how we deal with parents, and we have this written agreement, and we make sure that parents understand that the device is used definitely only for education.
Thank you. And Derek, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it sort of stems back to my presentation too. I mean, bringing parents on the journey of contemporary learning, experiential learning and project-based, parents are a critical factor in terms of educating their students, but even more so in a contemporary world. And part of that is leveraging the tools needed for that. And parents need to be able to know how to leverage those tools effectively too. So being brought along the journey, they have an obligation to be part of the learning journey of their child. And just like, you know, when I rolled out FX82 calculators in 1984 as a first-year teacher, I mean, that was probably a BYOD too, I guess, or a rollout. The same sort of thing applies. There are tools, and the laptop's a tool, and the parent needs to be more focused on the outcome of learning, and then that tool will become part of the suite that they're doing with their students, with their sons and daughters as well.
Okay, thank you. Was there anyone in the audience that had a question you wanted us to address?
Hi, I don't actually have a question. My name's Heidi. I'm the IT manager from British International School, Hanoi. What I wanted to share is that we introduced BYOD last year, and in fact, one of the big issues that we had was bandwidth usage. So one of the, you know, for all schools, your internet access is based on your budget in some way. And so what we had, of course, was students using YouTube as radio stations for themselves, right? Personal radio stations. And they've got it on high definition, right? So that was something that we had to work out how to control. And that became a policy issue, actually. So they had conversations with the students. And so from a network admin perspective, we don't throttle YouTube, we don't block it. But it's controlled by the teachers. And the other problem that we've had is botnets. So because when you bring in BYOD devices, even if you tell them they've got to have antivirus software on there, you get botnets. So you do really need a good firewall solution to protect yourself from that, because you need to be able to disable those devices from using your bandwidth. So that was just two things that weren't mentioned that I thought I'd share.
Just to add on to what you were saying is that the bandwidth planning comes as part of the planning stage. So what we do is normally it's basically like every device gets an IP address. So we normally restrict at least to 2 devices per user. So you can have 2 devices per user, and you can set a bandwidth limit per IP address. what you normally do is like what you have to factor in is the number of, so it's like the number of staff, the number of students, multiply at least into 3 because they could be having 3 devices. If you calculate that, basically giving them at least the maximum you could give them is a 1 Mbps connection, multiply that into the number of devices, and you'll be exactly having how much bandwidth you would require for your network. You need to add at least about 30% more bandwidth for that, for your guest network, or basically when you're having events and shows. A simple example would be for this particular conference over here is how to plan for bandwidth. If you're going BYOD and you're going completely cloud-based, you need to have enough of bandwidth to support the needs of that. Some schools also do allocation based on the role. So your students could have certain bandwidth, your teachers could have certain bandwidth. But basically what works best is that if you restrict the bandwidth based on the IP address. So everybody, it's uniform across all, everybody gets 1 Mbps bandwidth, and basically they can use as much as they want, but it restricts them to that particular amount of bandwidth only itself. So that's what you can set as a policy on your network.
Okay, thank you very much. I know that we have a lot more to say, but we can just take maybe one more question from the audience.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm actually from a local school here. We're just looking into creating a BYOD program. And I just want to know, because nowadays we have things like Google Classroom, Microsoft Classroom and things like that. I want to know, is there like, how do we really choose between one over the other? Because understand that there's this anytime, anywhere learning, but at the same time there's this kind of software package to kind of like consolidate everything. And I think I'm struggling whether or not to really push my teachers to actually go into one platform versus the other. And also because of that, you have your devices, whether it's important to have the same devices to help kind of like manage the BYOD program. And the last question is, of course, how important is the network accessibility of these devices to enable the success of the BYOD program? So in a sense, I'm looking for is, if I have one kind of a classroom management system, I know my teachers can be trained on one and they can just focus on one, but on the other hand, if they are overly focused on one, it means they don't want to use others, kind of, apps and things like that. So the balancing act, and just want to seek some kind of maybe advice on how to manage this. We're just starting on it. Thank you.
Actually, I understand. I think I understand what you're trying to get at there in terms of, should you push one of those platforms, whether it be Microsoft Teams and 365 or Google Classroom or whatever it may be, some LMS, other LMS and all that. Yeah, I see that quite often happen across the field, particularly when teaching staff are very used to using a particular set of suite of tools online. And some of those ambitious shaker and mover teachers who have been there for a while before BYOD happened in your school, all of a sudden they've been told that they can't use those anymore. It's a bit strange, isn't it? Because obviously they're very good teachers, they're using technology well. You don't want to burn that by saying you have to move to Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams or something. Where I've seen it work well is, it's nice to pick some sort of core environment, particularly for those teachers who are early on the journey and just want something. So if you can provide some consistency and say, we're going to try to start using Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, whatever it may be, and standardise on one there, but still allow them and the others, the original ones, to utilise those other tools that they're used to. And if you do your work, and your homework properly there, either you'll start to see where both of them complement. And it can be very messy from a technical administrator's point of view and all that, but in terms of the learning benefit, the last people you want to get offside are the teachers, isn't it?
I'll just add on just one part of it. Your solution is basically having a single sign-on. So you can use Office 365, you can use Google Apps. You leave the single sign-on to your IT staff. So a single sign-on will basically ensure that you can use all possible applications with one username and one password. Would be a solution to your problem. And as a parent as well, so as a parent it becomes much more easier because parents could have kids across all grade levels, and they should be just going to one particular portal where they can access everything rather than having different portals where they need to go to. So that's something that you need to think and collaborate with your IT team on getting that done. A single sign-on is what you require. and it's possible because we use all platforms. We use Office 365, we use Google Apps, we use a student information system, all integrated, one login password.
And there's going to be some times where a particular teacher goes, but I really like using that blog feature in some strange blog thing. It's not Google, it's not Microsoft or something. But it's then up to you to show them 365 or Google or whatever it may be and say, well, does this actually provide some benefit for you, and then support to bring them over if that's the only way to do it that way. Yeah. Sorry, can't hear.
For the maybe for the number of devices, we have to, if you're starting the BYOD, what I get from my experience is, first we have to limit the device that we support, because the more device that we get, we have to train the teachers on how to handle when something error during the classroom. If the teachers handle too many devices, I'm afraid that later the teachers will be the tech support instead of teaching.
So is it one device? Would you like suggest the similar device such that it's easier to access the internet, and
yes.
that's it, so that you don't have to worry about the technical aspect in
yes.
in allowing that?
Yeah, that's my suggestions.
Okay.
And then for Android devices, I'm not really suggest, because Android devices have a lot of types, although a lot of types, a lot of setup, a lot of settings, different brand, different settings, and then if the user is not really used to the technology, it's gonna buy sometimes instead of teaching itself.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'm very sorry. I know that we've just now, it sounds like this started to move into the, well, what is probably going to be a very controversial topic, and unfortunately, we really do need to let everyone have a break. We are still running a little bit behind. According to your schedules, we would be back by 3:05, which would give us all a 3-minute break. So why don't we move that a little bit and try to all be back by 3:15. And again, I'm very sorry for cutting off this conversation, because as very frequently does happen, we had just gotten into where it sounds like there's a lot of interest. Please do continue this conversation at your table groups. Also, catch any of these people, corner them, make them talk to you, and keep this conversation going this entire 3 days. Thank you very much to our panelists, and thank you also to our audience.